Okay, here we go. You have a test on Wednesday. Test on Wednesday. We have a lesson today, lesson tomorrow. So as far as the lesson is concerned tomorrow, note that we have a flex X schedule. We're going to be where? At the Riverland, okay? And before that, you guys, second hour, you have the senior alumni thing, right? So please get back here as soon as we possibly can so we can get to our next part of our lesson, okay? Study guide Monday and Tuesday, test on Wednesday. Here we go.
So it's a relic.
So I'll go to
For the test, you must know the difference between these two things, an observational study versus an experiment. Observational studies are very, 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 very common. For example, we talked earlier about how do we experiment about smoking causing lung cancer. Can everybody agree that smoking causes lung cancer? Smoking causes lung cancer, right? The high correlation between the two. However, would it be ethical to take kids from the time they're 6 years old and say, these half of kids, they're going to smoke cigarettes for the next 45 years, and these half of kids are not going to smoke cigarettes? You couldn't do that, could you? So therefore, we rely on an observational study. An observational study observes individuals and measures variables. What does not attempt to influence the response. This is sometimes referred to as a correlation study. Okay? This is the heart of it that you must know to be able to tell the difference. It does not attempt to influence the response. We don't administer something to influence the response. Okay? We'll go ahead and watch a few examples to see exactly what happens. But in an experiment, we deliberately impose a treatment and then measure the response. Okay? So, talk to the person next to you. Did you have childcare growing up? Or did your mom stay or dad stay home and take care of you? Or did you have a mixture of both? Go ahead, and what do you remember about it? Go ahead, share. What'd you have? Oh, orange.
I'm a game check.
Does anybody have a really fond memory of their child care? Like you're like, hey, I really enjoyed going where I was going. Anybody have a real, you do? Okay, can you tell me more?
I went to daycare at Debbie Persig's house.
Okay, Debbie Persig,
Yeah,
she was great.
she was great. Yeah.
Remember other people that were there?
Yeah.
Okay, made some friends?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Anybody have a really negative response? Or negative, okay, what was your negative thing?
Well, it wasn't when I was in daycare, but my daycare lady actually has a Netflix documentary about her because she killed her husband called The Florida Store Identity. Lois Rice or whatever.
Okay,
Yeah, I didn't know she was my babysitter until like 8 years ago when my mom told me about it.
wow, okay. Yep, those things happen, okay?
Those things happen.
Yep, yeah, it's a little scary, okay? We are thankful that Vienna was not murdered in the process, okay? So, let's pay attention, okay, and see what this is saying. A study of child care enrolled 1,364 infants and followed them through their 6th year of school. So they took all these kids, over 1,000 of them, they enrolled them in child care and watched them through kindergarten, preschool, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th and 6th grade. Later, the researchers published an article in which they stated the more time children spent in child care from birth to age 4.5, the more adults tended to rate them, both at age 4.5 and kindergarten, as less likely to get along with others, as more assertive, as disobedient, and as aggressive. Do you agree or disagree that kids that are in child care are more likely to be not get along, be disobedient and aggressive? What do you think? Go, talk. What do you think?
This got some.
She
looks like a serial killer.
This is a very, very, very good example of something that is poorly worded. People will take this all the time and they'll say, hey, we followed kids who were in child care and it looks like they were more disobedient, they had issues and stuff like that. They cannot draw that conclusion. This is an observational study, okay? Why? No treatment was imposed on the children. Here's what it would look like if treatment was imposed. We have 1,300 kids. We're going to take 600 of them and have them not go through child care. We're going to have 700 of them and have them go through child care. And randomly select who ends up where. Do you get my point? That would be an example of an experiment. This was an observational study. And absolutely, this conclusion cannot be drawn. What are the explanatory and response variables? Well, the explanatory variable is going to be childcare. Namely, the time spent. Were they in childcare for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years? Explanatory. What's the response in that situation? Well, what they are measuring in this situation, okay, is it says adults tended to rate them. So the response variable is the adult ratings on behavior. That's what we're trying to measure. So there is an explanatory response variable, but at the end of the day, does this study show that child care causes children to be more aggressive? Absolutely not. An observational study does not determine causation. An observational study does not determine causation. If you see an example of an observational study, the answer is always no. You cannot draw conclusions from this. Now, what about the smoking one? We see smoking happen over and over again. Very complex observational studies over time. Yes, we can. But they are very, very involved in this situation. Absolutely not. Do you think that cell phones lead to brain cancer? It would make sense. You hold the cell phone up to your ear, they're very close to the brain, right? What do you think? Have we tested this? Should we take a child and say, you know what? We're going to take a child from the time they're born till the time they're 7. We're going to strap a cell phone to the side of their head. They're going to watch what happens. We don't want to do that, right? Because if there is a negative impact, I know when I was growing up, my parents used to say, don't stand too close to the microwave, that the microwave can be dangerous. Brecken, you heard that too? Okay? There's no scientific evidence, no experiment that shows that, in fact, the microwaves can be dangerous. But in this situation, one study of cell phones and the risk of brain cancer looked at a group of 469 people who had brain cancer. So only people who had brain cancer were identified. The investigators matched each cancer patient with a person of same age, gender, race who then did not have brain cancer. So you got one group who does, one group who doesn't. Then asked them about the use of cell phones. Results, our data suggested that the use of handheld cellular devices is not associated with brain cancer. Is this an observational study or an experiment? Observational study. They didn't administer the cell phone. If they took the group and divided up, say, hey, let's have 400 people chosen at random who don't have a cell phone, and then 400 people at random who do have a cell phone, and then we're going to measure how often they use it and see the results, that would be an experiment. This is not. Observational study, no treatment was administered. Based on this study, would you conclude that cell phones do not increase the risk of brain cancer? What's the answer? No. Now, you may say, well, of course cell phones don't cause brain cancer. Well, all right, so we may agree on that, but this study doesn't show that, okay? This observational study does not show causation. Okay? It's very important to understand the difference between an observational study and an experiment. Okay, so do you guys think that smaller class sizes help you learn better? You guys appreciate a smaller class size opposed to a bigger class size, right?
Yes.
So suppose that we were to examine some schools, and we saw that there were schools that had an average class size of 20, and other schools had an average class size of 30. And we followed those kids after school, okay? Class size of 20, class size of 30. And those kids, as they progressed through life, we saw that the kids who had smaller class sizes, that they had better jobs, that they had better grades, and they were more productive in life. And then the groups of people that had larger class sizes, that they didn't have as much money and didn't do as well in school, okay? So let's say that that was a scenario. I want you to think of this, very important. What is something other than the class size that could have determined that outcome? Is there something else that we may not be thinking about that may have caused those kids that had smaller class sizes to do better and the people who had bigger class sizes to do worse? Something different than class size. Go ahead, talk. What's a different variable that could impact it? Go.
Children in the classroom.
I was also thinking
I think they're working. I don't know. I guess so.
And I try to squeeze it in.
I
Okay.
don't know.
Let's try to get 4 different responses here. Okay, what else might impact that? Teachers.
Yeah, I saw that.
Okay, so we're going to get to the example here in a second, but I'm going to say teachers. For example, if I'm a teacher to applying to work in a school district, okay, and I have the option, am I going to want to apply to a school that has smaller class sizes or bigger class sizes? Smaller class sizes. When I was in college, I was offered, and by the way, so my first job out of college, I made $20,573 a year. That was my first teaching contract. It's pretty small. I was offered straight out of college a job for $75,000. Why didn't I take it? It was in West LA. I didn't want to teach in Los Angeles. Do you know that every year in Chicago, they have a need for, they have 70 physics teacher positions that they have to fill, and they only fill about 3 or 4 of them. They're short about 66 physics teachers in Chicago every single year. Is there a reason why people don't want to teach in Chicago?
Yes.
Yeah, they have one of the highest murder rates in the entire United States, like teaching in Baltimore, right? It's tough, okay? So, teachers might be drawn to class areas that have smaller class sizes. What else?
I was gonna say like their parents or like their home life.
Okay, exactly. Is it possible that the parents who are more active in their kids' lives are choosing schools that are smaller? Absolutely. That could be a variable. That's really tough. And we have another thought. Behaviors? It is very possible that the larger schools maybe have some behaviors that the smaller schools don't have. Noise levels? I'm going to write this one down as well. Money and resources. Is it more economical to have smaller class sizes or bigger class sizes? It's more economical to have bigger class sizes, which is right now why Albert Lee has bigger class sizes. Last year, I got used to some small class sizes, and it was great because we were in a better situation financially as a district. This year, we took a little bit of hit last year, as a lot of schools have, and so what's happened to class sizes? They have gone up. Well, if your school has more money and resources, it might have smaller class sizes. You get my point? These are called working variables. Working variables are things you always have to be aware of, and you got to be able to identify a few, okay? So, this is a variable. Not identified. That may impact the response. So a working variable, it's not identified in the study, but it still might impact the response. We've got to be careful for those as we go ahead and set up our working variables, or as we set up our study. How do we do that? Well, there's a lot easier ways to do it. You can't just say, well, we're going to look at the smaller schools and we're going to look at the bigger schools. You got to say, we're going to take 1,000 kids and we're going to divide them randomly. You 500 go to the smaller school, you 500 go to the bigger school. And we're going to randomly assign teachers. You see what I'm saying? A big difference. Or we look at the very same school and we say, Miss Hanson, you're going to get the class size of 18. Mr. Gentz, you're going to get the class size of 32, and we randomly choose who goes there. You get my point? So you've got to be careful with that design. The working variable is very difficult. Confounding is when the impact when the impact of the two variables cannot be distinguished. So it's the confusion that happens. If you hear the word confounding and you think of confusion, you're right. We're confused about which one impacts what for what reason. So the two things that I want you to be able to pull away that we talked about so far is know the difference between the experiment and the observational study. The second thing is be able to identify the lurking variables. Let's actually look at example 3 so we can see what it says. It says, do smaller class sizes in elementary schools really benefit students in areas such as scores on standardized tests, staying in school, and going to college? We might do an observational study that compares students who happen to be in smaller and larger sizes early in the school years, but these are the variables that can definitely impact it without a doubt. Okay? So, beware of those. What does an experiment look like? Here are 2 examples of some good experiments. Internet phone calls. You can use voice over internet protocol to make long distance phone calls over the internet. Did you know that when I used to do long distance phone calls, we used to be charged differently for those? You guys ever heard that? Yeah, so when I was growing up, if you made a long distance phone call, so if I were to call from Albert Lea to Owatonna, I had to call long distance, okay? Because it was out of the Albert Lea area. So I would be charged a different rate. So you're charged per minute that you talked. So I would have to ask my parents, hey, I want to call my girlfriend who lives 20 miles away. Okay, we happen to go to the same school, but she was my girlfriend. They say, hey, make sure that you're keeping it under 10 minutes because we're paying about 5 cents a minute. That's the way it was. When I called from Greece back home when I was in college, because I went to Greece for a month, I called home once. I talked to my parents for 30 minutes. It cost me $65. You could buy phone cards that had cheap long distance use on them. And so when I was in college, I bought a long distance phone card where I could call my parents for about about 2.7 cents a minute. That was the cheapest I could get, but I had to call after 8 o'clock. So my parents would try to be home by 8 o'clock so they could see if I was going to call that night, and then we'd use our minutes at that time. Crazy, huh? That's how it worked. Now you just pick up a phone and you just call whoever you want, right? But isn't it incredible? What do we pay for this every month?
Too much.
More than I used to pay for myself, or more than I used to pay for my phone bill. You know what I mean? A lot. So, you can use this voice over to make long distance phone calls. How will this cost affect the use of service? Well, a university plans to experiment to find out. It will offer service to 350 students in one of its dormitories. Some students will pay a low flat rate. Others will pay higher rates at peak periods and very low rates at off-peak. The university is interested in the amount of time and use and the effect on the congestion of the network. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to see if you can identify who are the subjects in this situation. Write down who are the subjects, who are the people that are involved in the study. Yep, do you have a pass?
Wait, yeah, it is the students.
Yes.
His blood's up, he can't be messed up.
Okay, this is what you want. Tell the person next to you, what did you not have written down that I have written down? Go. Okay, the key is to be specific, okay? When you identify the subjects, be specific. If you just say students, it's not referring to all students. It's just the 350 students. And it's not 350 students at random. It's 350 students that happen to live in that dormitory. Okay, so be specific. Okay, there is a treatment here. Okay, talk to the person next to you or write it down. No, just write it down. Don't talk yet. What do you think is the treatment administered? What is the treatment that's administered?
I know, am I getting it? They were like,
Oh
just
my
stretching my thumb.
goodness.
Keep using it.
I'm excited to never use it.
Yes. Okay, so there are two treatments. You're either going to receive the treatment of the low rate or you're going to receive the treatment of the variable rate. If you wrote low rate and then you wrote, say, high rate and very low rate, that's fine, but it's important that you know you have two treatments. There's two things that are being administered in this situation. The explanatory variable, okay, that's what's causing the change. And what's causing the change? Well, it's the different types of rates. The treatment and the explanatory variable should really be the same, okay? But talk to the or write down, don't talk to the person next to you, write down what are we measuring for the response? What is the response that we are measuring in conclusion to our study? Go ahead, write our response variable or variables. There may be more than one. Okay, you should have two things you're measuring. You are measuring the time of use. How much are people using the long distance calling on the voice over internet protocol? And second of all, you are also measuring the effective congestion on the network, the congestion on the network. Our last one, you're going to do this one on your own, but as we start, does everybody agree that youth could afford to eat better and exercise more? Without a doubt. This is something I was just talking with a FIA teacher from the other day in Owatonna. We were talking, and we agreed that the most important things that kids can learn to do in school, read, write, do basic arithmetic, and learn how to exercise for life. Is exercise not one of the most important things to stay healthy for the rest of your life? Absolutely. Okay? Some people can argue that exercise maybe even precedes the ability to read or write. I mean, it's about you taking care of your body. You need to exercise more. Most American adolescents, actually, you read it all and try to do those four. Go ahead. You read it all on your own and try to do those four. If you want to work together, go ahead. Yep, do the four things. Thank you, Cooper. Be specific.
Middle school. My God. Okay. Maybe two, right? Yeah. Physical activity and nutrition. What do you see dollars? Explanatory roads. Oh. Same thing with street.
One of my other contacts are like actually just in my phone post. Yeah.
Watch me.
Oh, 3, there's 3.
Four.
Wait, both of them.
Let's write that.
Okay, my goal is to not trick you. I pulled this one from the book, but I do think it gives and I understand why they did it. The subjects, how many people said students? I get why you said students, but did they randomly choose the students or did they randomly choose the schools? They randomly chose the schools. So I would accept students, but it needs to include the schools as well. So you can say participate schools and their students, but technically students would not be fully correct. I'd take a half a point off for that response. The treatments, they either do the physical activity, or they do the nutrition, or they do both, or they do none. Get my point? So there's actually 4 different treatments here that can be administered. Hard to come up with those 4, isn't it? I missed it the first time I did it. The explanatory variable is the type of physical activity and nutrition plan. What is it that the response is measuring? What are we measuring here? What are they measuring?
Amount of physical activity and the consumption of fat.
Yeah. So the response is amount of physical activity and fat consumption. It's interesting because these things work, and I'm a direct product of it, okay? When I was growing up, if I was going to have something to drink, my mom always had orange juice and apple juice and grape juice in the house. We don't really have that in the house. Instead, we have water. Bottled waters we did yesterday become very popular, and getting water bottles, people have it all the time. In fact, when I first started doing Link Crew, I would come in on one of those nights that we do training, and I would bring in pop, Gatorade, stuff like that, but I'd never bring bottled water. Now I bring it all the time. You guys drink so much water than I did when I was growing up. What do they find? Kids who drink more juice and more pop when they're younger, like I did, have more cavities and are overweight more often. That's just as simple as it is. So they try to cut it out, and they promote water now. Has it worked? Yeah, I think so to some degree. I'd love to see the same thing done with physical activity. Okay, your assignment will be based off of that. You'll have one more tomorrow. You turn this off, we'll get you your assignment.